The stars twinkled brightly in the vast sky as the alien ship flew through the deep expanse of space. Princess Lyra and her crew, a group of 5 young alien girls, were on a journey to a distant planet. Their mission was to gather important resources from a newly discovered planet. It was supposed to be an easy mission. A quick stop to collect materials and return home, but the universe had other plans. Lyra's ship, Xanath, was sleek and fast, built to withstand the harsh conditions of space. However, something went terribly wrong. A sudden shockwave from a nearby dying star caused a massive system failure. Lights flickered and alarms blared. The ship was thrown off course, and no matter how hard the girls tried, they couldn't regain control. With a deafening crash, the ship spiraled down, landing hard on an uncharted planet. The ship's impact left a deep crater in the ground. Sparks flew from the damaged engines, and the air was thick with smoke. The crew was shaken but alive. They were bruised, but none of them were critically injured. Princess Lyra, as the leader, quickly took charge. Her sharp green eyes scanned the wreckage, and she barked orders at the others. Zara, check the engines. Lyra, take a look at the communications. Emra, help me gather the supplies. The girls rushed to their tasks, doing what they could to assess the damage. Lyra had always been a born leader. Her bright purple skin and silver hair made her stand out, but it was her strength of character that truly made her a leader. Others, each from different parts of their galaxy, followed her with respect. They knew she could handle any situation until now. The crash had left them stranded. The ship's communications were destroyed, and the engines were beyond repair. There was no way to send out a distress signal. The girls could try to fix things on their own, but they didn't have enough resources to make any real progress. They were stuck on this unknown planet with nothing but the wreckage of their ship and the harsh, unfamiliar environment around them. For hours, they worked together, gathering what supplies they could salvage. Lyra's mind raced as she searched for a solution. She didn't like the idea of being stuck, and she didn't want to admit it, but the situation was dire. If no one came to help soon, they would run out of food and water. They would have to survive on this planet until they figured out how to repair their ship if they ever could. Princess Lyra knew that their species had allies in the galaxy. But would anyone really come to their rescue? The planet they were stranded on was not known for having any major civilizations. There was a chance that no one even knew they were here. After a few hours of trying to work with the remains of the ship's communications system, Lyra slumped. Down in the dirt, exhausted, it was hopeless. She could feel the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. These girls looked to her for guidance, and she had failed them. Lyra, one of the girls, Zara, called out. She had short black hair and golden skin that shimmered in the sunlight. The communication system is completely destroyed. We can't send a signal. Lyra's heart sank. She had feared this would happen. Without the ability to communicate, they were truly alone. What do we do now? Samara asked. She was the youngest of the group, with light blue skin and a quiet nature. She was always the first to ask questions when things went wrong. Lyra looked around at her crew. They were all intelligent and skilled in different ways. Zara was an expert engineer, Lyra was a brilliant strategist, and Samara had the best instincts when it came to survival. But none of that mattered if they didn't have the means to survive. For the first time since the crash, Lyra felt a deep sense of fear. She didn't want to show it, but the truth was clear. They were in real trouble. As the hours turned into days, the girls tried everything they could to fix the ship. They found a nearby water source, a small stream running through the dense forest. They used their survival skills to gather food from the planet, but it was clear that time was running out. They had no idea how long it would take for someone to find them. The stress of the situation began to take its toll. The girls began to argue, their frustration boiling over. They were used to getting things done quickly, but here, nothing seemed to work. They were stuck, and no one was coming to help. We should just leave the ship behind and try to get off this planet ourselves. Zara suggested one evening, her voice sharp. We have the skills. We can build something. We don't need this. Wreck. Lyra shook her head. That's too risky. We don't know what's out there. It's safer here, for now.
Ow.
Zara crossed her arms. We can't wait forever. We're not going to get out of here by just sitting around. Lyra sighed. She understood Zara's frustration, but the decision was not hers alone to make. The situation had become too dangerous to make rash decisions. The girls needed a plan. As the days dragged on, the hope of rescue seemed to fade. The girls grew quieter, their spirits slowly diminishing with each passing hour. But just when they were beginning to lose hope, a signal came through. It wasn't much, just a simple blip on their barely functioning communication system. But it was enough to ignite a spark of hope. It's a human signal, Zara said. Looking over at Lyra with surprise, human ship is responding. Lyra's heart raced. Could it be? Could a human really be here to help them? The girls had heard about humans, how they were thought to be weak, primitive, and far behind in technology compared to other species. But if a human ship had come to their aid, it meant something different. It meant that there was hope. But as they waited for the human ship to arrive, none of them knew just how much their lives were about to change. The help they'd been waiting for wasn't from the powerful, advanced aliens they had expected. It came from a human, someone they never would have thought could make such a difference. The girls waited anxiously, eyes fixed on the small screen that flickered with the faint signal of the incoming human ship. Princess Lyra stood at the front, her mind racing. Could this really be the help they needed? A human ship answering their distress signal seemed impossible. Humans were considered primitive in the galaxy, barely advanced enough to be of any significance. Yet here they were, offering their assistance. Zara, the engineer, was the first to break the silence. "This is it," she said, her voice trembling. "The signal is strong enough. A human ship is coming." Her eyes were wide with disbelief. The weight of their situation now felt more real than ever. Lyra nodded slowly, her purple skin glowing in the dim light. Her mind worked quickly. There was a chance that this human ship could bring them the help they so desperately needed. But there were still many unanswered questions. Would the humans be kind enough to help? They have the resources to repair the ship or provide them with the supplies they lacked? Lyra knew one thing for sure. They couldn't afford to waste any more time. Every moment that passed was a moment of dwindling hope. "We'll have to trust them," Lyra finally said. "It's our only option." The girls gathered around the communication panel, awaiting the human ship's arrival. Time seemed to slow. As they watched the small dots on the screen grow larger, drawing closer to their crash site, the ship, although small compared to their own, was still a marvel of human engineering, simple yet sturdy. Lyra turned to Zara. "Can you get the ship ready? We need to be prepared in case this goes wrong." Zara's golden skin glowed in the low light as she moved to work. "I'll make sure we're ready. But I still don't understand how a human ship could respond to our distress signal. Strange." She looked over her shoulder at Lyra. "Are you sure we can trust them?" Lyra paused, then met Zara's gaze. "We don't have a choice." The next few hours passed in tense silence as they waited. The alien girls, each feeling the weight of their isolation, fidgeted anxiously. Even Samara, who had always been the quietest, was now pacing back and forth, her light blue skin reflecting the nervous energy in the air. It had been days since they had felt any hope, and now it seemed to be slowly returning, but with it came uncertainty. Finally, the human ship appeared on the horizon, cutting through the thick, cloudy sky. It was a small vessel, but the noise of its engines grew louder as it descended toward them. The alien girls watched in awe, their eyes wide with a mix of fear and curiosity. They had never met a human before, and now they would see one in person as the ship landed nearby. A cloud of dust and debris swept through the air. The ship was simple, not adorned with advanced technology like their own, but it seemed strong enough to make it through the harsh environment of the planet. It was a sharp contrast to their own sleek, sophisticated design. Lyra took a deep breath and stepped forward, her heart racing. The hatch of the human ship slowly opened, and a figure emerged. He was tall, wearing a rugged outfit, his face shielded by a mask. But even from a distance, the girls could see the determination in his posture, the readiness in his every move. This was a human, though they had expected something different. He stepped toward them, his boots crunching on the rocky surface of the planet. Lyra felt an unfamiliar sense of nervousness. The human's face remained hidden, but his presence was undeniable. He carried himself with an air of confidence, as if he knew exactly what he was doing. As the human drew closer, Lyra stood tall, her purple skin standing out against the dull colors of the planet. She extended her hand, a sign of peace. "I am Princess Lyra," she said, her voice steady, despite the strange tension in the air. "Thank you for coming." The human paused, then slowly removed his helmet. Out. His face was simple, though there was a warmth in his eyes that caught Lyra off guard. His hair was dark, and his expression was serious, but his eyes softened as he looked at her. "I'm Jack," he said, his voice rough but calm. "I got your message. I'm here to help." Alien girls watched in silence as Jack took a few steps closer. His eyes scanned the group, pausing as he noticed the differences in their appearances. He seemed unfazed by their otherworldly features, as if he had seen alien beings before. "What happened here?" Jack asked, glancing at the wreckage of their ship. Lyra hesitated before answering.
"Out."
"Our ship was damaged. We've tried to repair it, but it's beyond our capabilities. We've been stranded here for days." Jack nodded thoughtfully. "Well, I've got a few tools on my ship. No expert, but I can try to help." His eyes flicked toward their ship, and then back to Lyra. "How long have you been here?" 5 days, Lyra replied, her voice steady, but there was an undercurrent of exhaustion. "We've managed to survive, but we don't have the resources to last much longer." Jack's gaze softened. "I'll do what I can. Let's get you out." Of here, Lyra could hardly believe it. A human, someone she had thought of as less advanced and capable than her people, was offering help without hesitation. It wasn't what she had expected, but it was exactly what they needed. She nodded, grateful, though she didn't fully understand why he had come. "I'm sorry if we are a burden," Lyra said, her voice softening, "but we are in need of assistance." Jack shook his head. "No need to apologize. It's what I'm here for. No one should be stranded in space, not on my watch." Zara, still skeptical, stepped forward. You're sure you can help us?" She gave him a wary look. "Your ship doesn't seem as advanced as ours. How can you repair something like this?" Jack chuckled. "I may not have fancy alien technology, but I know my way around machines. I can at least get you started." He turned toward the wreckage, beginning to assess the damage with a careful eye. Lyra watched him, her thoughts in turmoil. Could a human really help them? She had no reason to believe he could, but there was something about his determination that made her believe he was the answer they had been waiting for. Over the next few hours, Jack worked alongside the girls. His approach was simple but effective. He made use of whatever tools he had, and though the work was slow, it was progress. It wasn't just the repairs that impressed Lyra, but the way Jack treated them. He didn't look at them as strange or lesser beings. He saw them as equals, deserving of help and respect. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the crash site, Lyra felt something she hadn't felt in days. Hope. Maybe they weren't as alone as they thought. Maybe humanity had something more to offer than just their reputation for being primitive. She watched Jack, who worked tirelessly despite the difficult conditions, and realized that humans might be far more capable than the galaxy gave them credit for. As the night fell, Lyra felt a shift. They had no idea how long it would take to get their ship working again, but for the first time since the crash, she believed they might just make it out of here. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the barren landscape, casting long shadows across the wreckage. The air was still and heavy, but there was a sense of quiet hope in the air. Jack had spent the previous day working alongside the girls, fixing the ship's systems with what little equipment he had on hand. Although their progress was slow, it was progress nonetheless. And for the first time in days, the girls felt like they weren't completely alone. Lyra stood by the wreckage, her arms folded, watching Jack work. There was something about him that felt different. He wasn't just a human, a species she had always believed was inferior, but a person with drive, skill, and a surprising level of intelligence. He didn't give up, even when the task seemed impossible. He didn't look at them as strange creatures from another galaxy. He looked at them as people, just like him. Zara, still skeptical of Jack's ability to help, had taken to watching him more closely. She was the most technically minded of the girls, and while she was starting to see that Jack was more capable than she had first believed, she remained uncertain. Humans had always been seen as weak in comparison to other races, and it was difficult for her to shake the prejudice. As Jack worked on the ship's engine, Zara approached him. "You've done a lot in one day," she said, trying to hide the hint of disbelief in her voice. "But do you really think you can fix this? I mean, it's a whole lot of damage." Jack wiped his brow with the back of his hand and glanced at Zara. "I don't know if I can fix everything, but I'm going to try. If nothing else, we'll have a better chance than we did before." His smile was small, but there was a calm confidence in it. Zara hesitated. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know us. You could have just left and gone back to your own people." Jack's eyes softened as he paused his work. "But I couldn't just leave you out here. No one should be left stranded. I know it's not easy for you to trust me, but I'm here to help. I don't need anything in return. I just want to make sure you're okay." Zara blinked, a little surprised by his honesty. She had expected him to want something in return, or at least expect some sort of reward. But Jack's words didn't carry any hidden agenda. It was strange to her. She wasn't used to humans acting this way. "I didn't expect a human to be so kind," Zara admitted, her voice softer now. Jack gave a small laugh, his face still focused on the ship. "We're not all bad, you know. Some of us actually care." Zara nodded slowly, her mind still spinning with the new information. As much. As she tried to resist, she couldn't help but admire Jack's determination. His willingness to help without asking for anything in return was unlike anything she had ever seen from any of the beings she had known. Meanwhile, Lyra stood off to the side, observing the interaction between Jack and Zara. She was proud of Zara's shift in perspective, but a part of her still felt a twinge of doubt. Could humans really be trusted? Could they be relied on in times of crisis? After all, they had only just met Jack. There was still so much they didn't know about him. "Lyra." "We need to talk," came Samara's voice from behind her. Lyra turned to see Samara standing there, her blue skin a soft contrast to the orange-red hues of the planet's sky. Samara had always been the quiet one, but when she spoke, her words were often wise beyond her years. Lyra motioned for her to come closer. "What's on your mind, Samara?" "I'm starting to think that maybe we misjudged humans," Samara said, her voice thoughtful. "I mean, we've always heard they were weak. But Jack, he doesn't act like they said. He's strong in a way that I didn't expect." Lyra frowned slightly. "I know what you mean, but we can't ignore the fact that humans are still not as advanced as other species. They may be helpful now, but can we really rely on them long term?" Samara thought for a moment, then shook her head. "I don't know, but maybe it's not about how advanced they are. Maybe it's about what's in their hearts. Jack is here because he wants to help us, not because he has to. That's what matters." Lyra sighed, a deep breath escaping her lips. Samara's words struck a chord within her. She had always prided herself on her logic, but sometimes logic didn't explain everything. She had to admit Jack's actions spoke louder than anything she had read in the countless scrolls and records of her people. Over the next few days, the girls began to rely more and more on Jack. His ship may have been small and simple, but it was sturdy, and he had a surprising amount of knowledge about technology. Despite being from a different species, he was able to understand their language and work with their tech in a way that was almost as if he had been trained to do so. The alien girls couldn't help but be impressed. Lyra found herself spending more time with Jack as he worked. While the others helped in their own ways, she found herself learning from him. She asked him questions about human technology, about his home planet, and about the way his people lived. Jack was happy to answer, sharing stories about Earth and his life as a mechanic. He spoke with such warmth and sincerity that Lyra found herself drawn to him. There was something about his presence that made her feel safe. As they worked together, Lyra began to see Jack in a new light. He wasn't just a human mechanic who had stumbled upon their crash site. He was someone who, despite all the differences between their worlds, had taken it upon himself to help. She couldn't deny that his actions were starting to change her perception of humans. One evening, as they sat around the campfire, Lyra looked over at Jack, who was sitting nearby, cleaning his tools. The firelight flickered in his eyes, and for the first time, Lyra felt a sense of gratitude towards him.
That.
She knew it wasn't just because he had fixed their ship or helped them. Survive it was because he had shown them kindness in a way that no one else had. "You've done a lot for us, Jack," Lyra said, her voice soft. "I want you to know that we appreciate it. It's more than you could ever know." Jack looked up, his eyes meeting hers. "I'm just doing what anyone would do." Lyra shook her head. "Not everyone would. You've changed our lives, Jack. You've given us hope when we thought all was lost." Jack smiled at her, a quiet warmth in his eyes. "Sometimes all it takes is a little hope to change everything." Lyra sat in silence for a moment, pondering his words. Maybe Jack wasn't so different from her people after all. Maybe the galaxy had underestimated humanity, and perhaps it was time to see them for what they truly were: capable, strong, and compassionate. The days on the alien planet were blending into one long stretch of survival and repair. The girls, once full of worry and doubt, were beginning to feel a sense of hope. Jack had been a steady presence, working tirelessly on their ship and offering companionship when it was most needed. With each passing day, the alien girls were starting to believe that they might just make it out of this place alive. Lyra had come to respect Jack, though she still kept a careful distance. It wasn't easy for her to place her trust in someone so different, but she couldn't deny that he had earned her admiration. His hard work and determination were obvious. His willingness to help without expecting anything in return was something she couldn't ignore. Zara, who had been the most skeptical of Jack, was slowly coming around. She had begun to work more closely with him, helping to fix some of the ship's broken systems. While she still couldn't fully shake her belief that humans were inferior, she had started to see Jack's skill in a new light. The more she worked with him, the more she realized that he wasn't just a simple mechanic. He had a kind of quiet genius that she hadn't expected. One morning, as the sun rose over the barren landscape, Jack and Zara were bent over the ship's engine, trying to figure out why the power core wouldn't start. The rest of the girls were resting nearby, keeping watch or gathering food. "It's this circuit," Zara muttered, tapping the side of the engine. "I can't get it to connect properly." Jack wiped his hands on his jumpsuit and stood up. "Straight, let me take a look." Zara stepped aside, her arms crossed, watching as Jack knelt down by the engine. He gently prodded the wires, his hands moving with confidence. As he worked, Zara couldn't help but feel a small sense of awe. It wasn't just that Jack had fixed the ship's power cells or repaired their life support systems. He had a way of making things work that she couldn't quite explain. "You know, I didn't expect humans to be this good with technology," Zara admitted, her voice a little quieter than usual. Jack smiled up at her. "Well, we don't have the fancy stuff that you all do, but we make do with what we have. Sometimes simplicity works best." Zara nodded, impressed, despite herself. She watched as Jack connected the final wires and slowly powered up the system. The engine hummed to life with a low rumble, the lights on the ship flickering back on. "There we go," Jack said, wiping his hands on his pants. "I think that'll hold." Zara stepped forward, unable to hide the small grin that formed on her face. "I guess you know what you're doing after all?" Jack laughed, a soft chuckle. "Thanks. I don't get many compliments on my work, but I'll take it." They both stood there for a moment, looking at the repaired engine. It felt like a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless, in a place where everything had seemed hopeless. Something had finally gone right. "Well, we're one step closer to getting out of here," Zara said, her voice more hopeful than it had been in days. Jack nodded, but before he could respond, Lyra appeared from behind the ship, walking toward them. Her purple skin glowed softly under the morning sun, and her sharp green eyes were focused on Jack. "Good news?" she asked, her tone still cautious but less distant than it had been in the past. "We've got power again," Jack said, wiping his hands on his shirt. "We'll need to test it a bit, but it looks like we're moving forward." Lyra raised an eyebrow, still skeptical but impressed. "Didn't think you'd be able to fix it this quickly." Jack shrugged. "I've worked with less." Zara chuckled. "I think I've underestimated you." "It's not the first time," Jack said with a wink. For a moment, There was silence between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. The tension that had once existed seemed to have faded. The girls were starting to see Jack for who he was, someone who could help them, and Jack was beginning to see them for who they were too. They weren't just alien princesses and warriors. They were individuals, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. "You're welcome to join us for breakfast," Lyra offered, her voice still calm but with a hint of kindness. Jack smiled, his eyes lighting up at the invitation. "Be happy to. It's been a while since I've had a proper meal." The girls gathered around the campfire as Jack sat down with them. They shared what little food they had, some dried fruits and basic protein bars that Jack had brought from his ship. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep them going. As they ate, the conversation turned to Earth. Jack shared stories about his home planet, talking about the cities, the animals, and the strange human customs that the girls found fascinating. Lyra, who had been silent for most of the meal, listened intently. She had always thought of Earth as a backward place, a planet full of primitive beings. But as Jack spoke, she began to wonder if she had been wrong. "You make Earth sound like a beautiful place," Lyra said after a moment, her voice thoughtful. "I always thought humans were primitive, but now I see there's more to you than I imagined." Jack smiled. "We're not perfect, that's for sure, but we try. Hey, we're good at adapting. That's why I couldn't leave you here. I couldn't just let you suffer when I knew I could help." Lyra's eyes softened, and she nodded slowly. "Thank you, Jack. I don't know if I've said it enough, but I appreciate everything you've done for us. We've been lost, and you've given us hope?" Jack looked around at the girls, who were all looking at him with a new sense of respect. It felt strange in a way, human, receiving respect from aliens, but it also felt right. He had done what he could, and in return, they had accepted him. "You don't need to thank me," Jack said, his voice gentle. "I'm just doing what any decent person would do." But Lyra wasn't sure she agreed with him. She had been taught to see humans as weak, but Jack had shown her that strength could come in many forms. It wasn't about power or technology. It was about the will to help, to do what was right, even when it was difficult. As the day went on, the girls began to work with Jack more closely. They saw the human in a new light, not just as someone who had fixed their ship, but as someone who had brought something much more valuable: trust. The ice between them had broken. A new bond was beginning to form. Lyra stood up from the fire and looked around at the wreckage of the ship, now showing signs of repair. She could see the small victories they had achieved, and for the first time in a long while, she felt something she hadn't expected: hope. They weren't out of the woods yet. They were closer than they had ever been. "Let's finish what we started," Lyra said, her voice strong again. Jack smiled, standing up beside her. Together, for the first time, the alien girls knew that they weren't alone. They had a human by their side, and that made all the difference. The days turned into weeks, and slowly, the alien girls and Jack continued to make progress on the ship. It wasn't easy, but each small success brought them closer to leaving the planet. Jack had become an important part of their team, not just as a mechanic, but as someone they could rely on. His knowledge and skill had helped them repair the ship's systems and power core. But it was his kindness and determination that had truly earned their trust. It wasn't just the work that brought them closer. During the long hours spent together, Jack and the girls had started to share more about their lives and their worlds. They laughed, they told stories, and, for the first time in weeks, the atmosphere around the wreckage wasn't so heavy with fear. It felt almost normal. One evening, after a long day of repairs, the girls gathered around the campfire. The fire crackled, sending sparks into the air as they sat together, enjoying a simple meal. Jack, still amazed by the fact that he was sitting with a group of alien girls, leaned back and stretched his legs out, looking up at the stars above. "I never thought I'd be stuck on a strange planet with aliens," Jack said with a chuckle, looking around at the girls, let alone helping them fix a spaceship. "But here we are," Lyra smiled, her purple skin glowing softly in the firelight. "I never thought I'd trust a human," she said, her voice steady, "but here we are." Words hung in the air for a moment, and Jack felt a warmth spread through him. He hadn't come here expecting to be accepted, but over time, the girls had come to rely on him. They had started to see him as more than just a human. He was one of them now. "You've earned our trust, Jack," Lyra continued, her eyes meeting. "His? We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you." Jack nodded, a smile on his face. "I'm just glad I could help." Samara, who had been quiet up until now, spoke softly from her place beside the fire. "What made you decide to help us, Jack? Why did you come? I mean, you didn't know anything about us or our species." Jack looked at Samara, surprised by the question. He'd never really thought about it much. It had just felt right to help them, but he hadn't been able to explain why, I guess. "It was the way you all were," Jack said, trying to find the right words. "You didn't give up. Even though you were stranded, you kept going. And when I saw that distress signal, I couldn't just ignore it. I figured, if I can help, I should." Zara, who had been listening intently, nodded. "You didn't come for glory or anything. You came because you wanted to do the right thing." Jack shrugged. "Yeah, I guess so. I don't really care about glory. I just want to do what I can to make things better." Zara smiled, her golden skin glowing in the firelight. "I didn't think humans could be like this," she said, a hint of admiration in her voice. "You've shown us that there's more to your species than we thought." Jack's heart warmed at her words. "I'm glad I could prove you wrong." As they sat around the fire, the conversation turned to lighter topics. They spoke about their homes, their families, and what life was like on their respective planets. Jack learned about the different cultures of the alien girls, and they were fascinated by his stories of Earth. He spoke about the cities, the technology, and even the strange customs humans had that they found odd, like shaking hands or saying please and thank you. The more they shared, the more Jack realized how much they were all alike, despite the differences in their appearances and backgrounds. They all had hopes, dreams, and fears. They all wanted to survive, to be free, and to live without the constant threat of danger hanging over their heads. And for the first time, Jack felt a deep connection with the girls. He had never felt this way before, like he was part of something bigger than himself. After a while, the conversation quieted, and they all sat back, gazing at the stars. The sky above was vast and endless, just like the world they had all once known. "You know," Jack said, breaking the silence, "I've been thinking about something. I don't know how long it's going to take to get this ship fixed, but I'm not going to leave until I know you're safe." The girls turned to look at him, surprised by his words. "Jack," Lyra said softly, her eyes full of appreciation, "you've already done more than we could ever ask. You've helped us when no one else would." Jack smiled, his voice steady. "I don't do it for thanks. I do it because it's the right thing to do. I couldn't live with myself if I left and knew I could have helped." Lyra met his gaze, and for the first time, there was no doubt in her eyes. "You're right. You've shown us that there's more to humans than we ever realized. I think I've learned more from you than I have from anyone else." Jack felt a lump in his throat, his heart swelling with gratitude. "I'm glad I could help." As the fire burned low, they all sat in comfortable silence, each of them feeling a little less alone. Jack had come to their world as a stranger, but now he was part of their journey. They were no longer just a group of alien girls stranded on a foreign planet. They were a team, working together to overcome the odds and get home. The next morning, they began to work again. Jack and Zara focused on the ship's power systems, while Samara and Lyra worked on securing supplies for the journey ahead.
Yeah.
Work was difficult, but the bond between them all had grown stronger. They were no longer just strangers thrown together by circumstance. They were friends, united by a common goal. As the day wore on, they made even more progress on the ship. Jack had been right. They weren't out of the woods yet, but they were closer than they had ever been. With each piece of the ship that fell into place, their hope grew stronger. Lyra couldn't help but look at Jack with new respect. He had given them more than just his skills as a mechanic. He had given them his heart, and that in the end was what had made all the difference. The days had passed, each one blending into the next, filled with hard work and quiet moments of reflection. Slowly, the wreckage of the Xanath transformed under the combined efforts of Jack and the alien girls. The repairs were coming along, faster than anyone had expected. were still some systems to test and small adjustments to make, but the ship was almost ready to fly again. The girls were no longer the nervous, frightened travelers who had crashed on this barren planet. They had found strength in each other, and they had found something in Jack that none of them had anticipated: trust. It not only helped them fix their ship, but he had given them something far more valuable as loyalty. It was late one evening when Lyra and Jack stood together, looking over the ship. The stars were beginning to appear in the sky, twinkling softly in the distance. The campfire crackled beside them, sending a warm glow across their faces. The air was still, the night peaceful. "We're almost there," Lyra said, her voice a mixture of relief and pride. "The ship's nearly ready." "I can't believe it." Jack nodded, his arms crossed as he stared at the ship. "You've all done a great job, too. I couldn't have done it without your help. You've got more skills than I gave you credit for." Lyra turned to him, a small smile on her face. "You're being modest. You've done the hard work." Jack chuckled softly, looking down at his hands. "I don't know about that. I've just been doing what I can." There was a silence between them as they watched the stars. For a moment, it felt like everything had fallen into place. Despite all the struggles, they had made it this far. They had worked together, learned from each other, and found a bond that neither species had expected. "We wouldn't have made it without you, Jack," Lyra said quietly, her voice filled with sincerity. "You've shown us what it means to be more than just a survivor. You've shown us what it means to help without expecting anything in return." Jack turned to her, surprised by her words. He had never thought of his actions as something extraordinary. To him, it had just been about doing what felt right. But hearing Lyra say it made him realize something he hadn't fully understood before. He had been taught to see himself as insignificant in the grand scheme of the universe. But here, on this alien world, he had found a place where his actions mattered. He had made a difference. "I didn't expect any of this," Jack said softly, his voice sincere. "I didn't expect to find friends, especially not among aliens, but I'm glad I did." Lyra smiled warmly, her eyes meeting his. "It's strange, isn't it, how a simple decision can change everything? A few weeks ago, I never would have imagined that we'd be here with you by our side." Jack looked at the ship again, his thoughts wandering. "I think we've all learned a lot from each other," he said, his voice thoughtful. "I came here thinking I was just going to fix a ship, but I've ended up learning so much about you and your people. You're not so different from us, really. We just want the same things." Lyra nodded, her expression serious. "We do. We all want the same things. To survive, to protect those we care about, and to find a place in the universe. I think that's something we can all understand." As they stood together, a soft breeze blowing through the camp, the other girls joined them, gathered around the fire. Zara, Samara, and the others smiled at Jack as they sat down beside him. "We're ready to go, Jack," Zara said, her voice full of excitement. "The ship's as ready as it's going to get. We can leave this planet behind." At each of them, his heart swelling with pride. They had come so far. And now, it was time for them to go home. "Then let's do it," Jack said, standing up with a sense of purpose. "Let's get you all back where you belong." The alien girls gathered their belongings, and one by one they boarded the Xanath. The ship, once a broken shell, now looked almost brand new. The systems hummed to life as the engines roared softly, ready to take flight. Jack stood by the ramp, watching as the girls took their places in the ship. His heart was full, knowing that he had been part of something so important. Lyra approached him last, her steps slow. She stopped just in front of him, looking up at him with a mix of gratitude and sadness. "You've done more for us than we could ever repay," she said softly. "I wish there was more I could say, but words don't seem enough." Jack smiled. "Gently, you don't have to repay me. I've done this because I wanted to, because I believe in what you all are." Lyra's eyes softened. "You've shown me that not all humans are what I thought. Maybe the universe isn't as different as we think. Maybe in the end, we're all just trying to make the best of things." Jack nodded, feeling a deep sense of respect for Lyra. "You've taught me the same thing. We're all trying our best, no matter where we come from." Lyra smiled, a hint of sadness in her expression. "I hope we meet again, Jack. When you're ready, you're always welcome on our planet." Jack gave her a soft, warm smile. "Thank you, Lyra. Maybe one day I'll take you up on that offer." With one last look, Lyra turned and walked up the ramp, disappearing into the ship. The door closed behind her, and Jack stepped back, watching. As the Xanath slowly lifted off the ground, the ship rose into the sky, disappearing into the distance as it made its way home. Jack stood there, his eyes fixed on the sky, a sense of peace settling over him. The girls were going home, but their journey had changed him. He had come to this planet thinking he was just helping a group of stranded aliens, but he had ended up finding something far more meaningful: friendship, trust, and the understanding that no matter where you came from, you could always make a difference. As the ship disappeared from view, Jack turned and walked back to his own ship. He knew it was time to return to Earth, but he also knew that no matter where his journey took him next, the lessons he had learned here would stay with him forever. And for the first time, Jack felt truly at peace.